Hello, my friend. Hi, Connie. How are you?
Welcome to the Brave Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Jena Rodriguez. Entrepreneurs are leading the way and creating a whole new level of possibility. Each week, listen in to hear how brilliant entrepreneurs share their brave secrets. Entrepreneurship is not the easy way. It is the brave way. Now let's get our brave on.
I am amazing. I'm excited to be here with you.
I am too. We were just talking how you just flew into the country, and I was like, are you going to make it to this interview? But yeah, you came in yesterday, right?
Yep, and I wouldn't miss this, Jena. This is awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, before we dive in, because we have a lot to talk about, just share with us what you what your work in the world is.
Love it. So basically, I support entrepreneurs with helping them to be able to share their story in a way, and their message really in a way that brings them closer to their family and to their people through building trust. And that's really important to me because I really almost lost everything that matters most to me in the world.
Well, we can't leave on that cliffhanger, so let's talk about that.
Oh, Jena, my story's kind of crazy. I really started this journey and wanted to be home with my little girl. And I still remember the day, getting in my car and I was driving to my office, and I loved what I did, but I really wanted to be home with my little girl. And I was crying the whole way there, Jena. I would pull myself together and pretend like I wasn't and do my work and try and serve the best I could. Right. But on top of that, we were actually living in an area of town that was really unsafe. And so I know this podcast is all about brave. And I remember one day looking down at my little girl and just being so scared because I knew that we were not in a safe area of town. We had to move, but we didn't have enough money. I didn't know what to do. And so I decided I needed to start a business. And Jena, I was terrified. I was like, I know nothing about business. I didn't know what to do. I started going to these events to start to learn some things. And finally, I got enough information and I felt like, okay, I can do this. And I got enough money to move. And I still remember the day, like walking into our new house and my little girl skipping across our kitchen floor and out into the backyard, and there was trees everywhere. And I felt like I did it. I won. Like, this is amazing. But Jena, it was actually at that moment that I realized I was about to lose everything that mattered most to me, because I had been so busy hustling in my business. I was disconnected from my family. I wasn't having the full results that I wanted in my business. In some ways I was making progress, and in some ways I felt like the best kept secret unintentionally. I don't know if you've ever felt like that, but just couldn't get my message out there in the way that I wanted to. Right. And I'll never forget one day I was actually going for an interview. I was in my office late for this interview. I had a million things on my to-do list. My little girl's having a temper tantrum outside my office door. And I'm just feeling so stressed out. And I don't know if you've ever been so stressed out that you just can't even think clearly. Absolutely. But this is where I was at. You can relate to that?
100%. Yeah, for sure.
So this is where I was at. And I remember in a moment of complete overwhelm and desperation, I picked up a glass and I threw it at the wall. Mm-hmm. And I still remember looking down and seeing pieces of shattered glass all around me. And Jena, it was in that moment that I said to myself, Connie Benjamin, you will do whatever it takes to, yes, get your message out, but in a way that helps you feel close to your family. And so that's what I've been on a quest to do is really help entrepreneurs with on this crazy entrepreneurial journey, how do we stay close and connected and build trust with not just ourselves and who we really are and our purpose, but the people that we love most, and with our potential clients. How do we do that in the most effective way possible? And so that's what I spent the last decade doing.
Yeah, unbelievable. And you're such a storyteller. I love you. I'm like, I was there with you for that moment. And it's sometimes those hardest, most challenging and kind of push us up against the wall moments that it creates the breakthrough and I call it the surrender moment. Right. And so once you had that experience and you kind of saw the light, it's like, wow, this is not what I want. How did you start to step into trusting yourself, trusting the next step? And because I feel like that is a conversation, I say it all the time, it's like, trust yourself, do it, do what's right for you. And yet I don't know if everybody can hear that voice, or really recognize it for what it is. And so it's kind of nebulous for a lot of people. So how did you get there? How did you get to trusting yourself more?
Oh, that's such a beautiful thing to ponder and to talk about. So for me, it was a couple different things that really made a difference for me. One was understanding, and by the way, trusting yourself. It's so beautiful that you're starting there, because I believe that everything starts from there, right? It's
Yeah.
trust in ourselves. If we don't have trust in ourselves, we can't build that courage to be brave and to build the trust in others. And really everything comes down to trust. And so for me, it was first understanding that I wasn't alone, understanding that there was a bigger picture going on. And when I began to see that clearly, that I did have some sort of divine purpose, that this path I felt called to go on. And by the way, anything that I talk about is that my fire within, women with fire. It's always about that fire within us. And what that really means to me, it's that calling of our heart. It's that moment that we feel called to do something that we don't feel enough to do. And in your podcast, in your message, you're all about brave. And I think that's really what we're talking about, is how do we step outside of our comfort zone and into the unknown. And for me, the beginning part of that was understanding that I wasn't alone. There was a divine higher being, whatever that means to people, that was saying, this is the path you need to go on. In my book, Women with Fire, I do outline very specific steps to hear that inspiration and to be guided by that inspiration, because I believe that that's pivotal to being able to take that next step on the path towards greatness and ultimately on the path towards our divine potential.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I subscribe to GUS, God, Universe, Source. So, I call it what you want, find it the way you find it, right? And build your relationship with that kind of divine, source of, or higher purpose, right? And I think that has been my practice, and it's certainly something I struggle with at times too. Because we live in such a world where, it's the pressures and the responsibilities and the have-tos and the mothering and the wifing and the, being part of a family, et cetera. And then, let alone run a business that takes all of us. It takes everything we have to be a business owner, because there's no one else, pushing us. However, we're not alone. And I think that's, if we could really tie in the CEO of being in our own business, doesn't mean we're on an island by ourselves, right? We have that higher power that is right there waiting. And yet, for me at least, and I'm curious what you think, I tend to, feel like I have to do it all. I have to be the one. And I started to see that that's not necessarily trusting myself. That's actually proving to others, that I can get it done, versus trusting something to move through me. Does that make sense to you as well?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love how you put that. That is so brilliant. And I think that I can relate so strongly with that, because for me, it's constantly this moving closer to the divine and who I'm meant to be, and feeling like, but I've got this and I can do this on my own. And then I fall flat on my face, Jena, and I get back up and I go, oh wait, I'm not alone. And I can do this with divine help. Really, there's a couple things that I've learned that have helped me to be able to, as much as I can, stay on that path and stay connected with the divine. And really, since I've been able to do that, I've just seen the hand of the divine in my life and in the lives of those around me, and just seen how really each stepping stone occurs. And yeah. I think one way that's been really pivotal in helping me to do that is using, we have a 3-step process that we use in the My Fire Within system. And this is really, it's a very simple process. The first one is about your purpose. It's understanding really what that is and receiving that guidance and being clear on a daily basis, getting that guidance. And then the second is kind of like those Olympic 3 rings that tie together, right? The second, yeah, totally. They overlap exactly. The second one is about your relationships and really understanding that they're really connected. Those, our purpose, our relationships are all connected. And then the last piece is about your influence and understanding that when we have that increase in influence, they really are connected. We're more powerful in reaching our purpose. We're more united in our relationships, and we're able to share a message in a more powerful way. And I think for me, one of the things that has helped me to a piece of that's helped me to stay connected with the divine and connected with my purpose in business while I'm juggling all the craziness, because I can definitely relate as you're talking about juggling being a mom and a wife and all of these things. For me, is something that I talk about a lot, which is fire priorities, and really having those in order so that I can powerfully move towards those 3 distinct areas in my life. That makes sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I love that. And I think this concept of how life is an overlap. And, you know, and when we realize that maybe we're one of our rings, one of our circles, our circles of influence or what have you, is out of sync with that overlap. I don't think it's meant to be separate. Right. And, but it is learning how to powerfully manage the overlap. And if we can come back to like I think how we're starting this conversation, trusting ourselves first. And I love fire priorities. Do you want to tell us any more about that? That's kind of curious. I'm curious now.
Totally I can. And by the way, you know what's interesting? So this is part of the My Fire Within system. There's several parts to it. So this is just one piece. But what's interesting, if you look at those 3 rings and how they fit together, at the very center of them, that axis of all of them is trust. Yeah. And so I love that it's really about trust in ourselves, trust in our relationships, trust in our relationships in the influence sphere, and trust in the divine. And it all comes down to trust. So fire priorities is a piece of that. It's one way to step into that trust. So it's an acronym because I love acronyms. They help me to learn and to remember. And Jena, I can use all the help I can get. So this is what I use.
I love it.
So the F in fire priorities stands for first creator. And as we've been talking today, I know it resonates with you about just getting that guidance first. And I think so often in this busy world, we can be, get out of bed, grab our phone, check our messages, do all these things, and we get in the momentum of our to-do list. But when we step out of that and we get in the momentum of getting connection with the divine, going to the creator first, it really changes everything. And that can be done in so many different ways, whether that's prayer or meditation or just talking to the divine and saying, oh my gosh, I'm going through so much, like help me out, whatever that means. Just doing that first.
I love that.
Yeah. The I in fire priorities stands for inspired self-care. And Jena, that wording is very intentional. The inspired self-care, I'm not talking about the kind of self-care we see in the movies with like those cucumber things on our eyeballs. I really actually don't know anybody that does that. Maybe one day I'll meet somebody that's like, Connie, I do that. And high five if you do.
What do you mean?
Right, like high five if you do. But man, in the movies, that's all we see, right? Like shop therapy, putting the cucumber things on our eyeballs. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like what fills your soul, what helps you to feel good and strong and brave. So that can be anything from exercise to journaling to meditation to gratitudes, whatever that is. And then the R in fire priorities. And honestly, Jena, this is one of the biggest ones that gets missed in the entrepreneurial space. And we're seeing that coming out in a lot of the statistics where entrepreneurs are actually 10% more at risk of facing divorce. And I believe it's because this piece is often not in the picture. And so the next one is the R in fire priorities stands for relationship with your partner. And that's really engaging with your partner in a very fast way. It doesn't have to take a long time. It really can be very quick.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I can tell you some stories about that too. But the E in fire priorities stands for engage kids. The reality is we are working, many people working from home, especially with what's happening in the world today. There's a lot of people, entrepreneurs working from home. We've got sweet little kids that wanting our attention all the time. And how do we do that when we've got a business to run and all of the things?
Baby.
Totally, we got a business baby and a baby, and how do we deal with all the babies? And so engaged kids really just takes a moment, and it just makes me think about, there was one time where I knew this principle, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to align to it. And I was just in the final stretch of my book, and Jena, I had like a last chapter to do. My editor was breathing down my neck. I'm like, I got to get this done. And my little girl comes into the room, and she's about five years old at the time. And she's pulling on my arm, mommy. I'm like, just a second, sweetie, just a second. I'm like, the flow is going, I just got to finish this chapter. I'm in the zone. And she's comes back in, mommy, tugging on my sleeve. And then I remembered this. I started to get a bit frustrated. How do I do this? What do I do? And I remembered this lesson, closed my laptop, and I lifted up my hands, and I had monster hands, and I chased my little girl around the house for like a minute. And she sees me coming, and she goes squealing around the side and goes flying under her bed. Her little sister has no idea what's going on, but she sees the fun. She starts engaging in it. She starts giggling and running down the hall. Pretty soon I'm chasing both of them, and they're flying under the bed, and I'm tickling them under their bed. And in a moment, I had their hearts. And I'll tell you what, Jena, right after that, I had their hearts. They're giggling and laughing. I'm giggling and laughing. We went back, and I started firing off that chapter of the book.
Yeah, I love that, because what I heard is you're connected to your heart, which is what needs to come through for that chapter, right? Not from the head, not from and it being more in the moment, more in the present moment of being with your kids, and and that it's like the now, right, actually reconnects you to what needed to be said. And I bet that last chapter is the bomb.
I got kid power in that.
I got kid I got fun tickles in that chapter. Man, I love the fire priorities. I think that's brilliant, and just part of the picture of, I think it's part of being brave. I think it's part of, being really in trust of yourself, and being in alignment, and, and I know that we, I can't speak for everyone, but I know, being an entrepreneur for the last, 14 years, that managing all of that and being able to overlap all of that takes practice. That's all I can say. I always like to say, because I'm a student of life, but more importantly, we need to be practitioners, and we don't always get it right, or it's not about perfection, but it is about the intention, and I think those 4 things are amazing intentions, right, to stay with. So thank you for sharing. And so on that note, I'd love to know, like you and me both, we come up with acronyms or methods or processes and structures, which helps us remember and other people remember and learn it. And so how did you arrive to that? Because for me, when I discover something I can teach someone else, it's because I went through it. It's because I wasn't so good at it, or I needed it myself. So for instance, in the R, let's just say the R priority, the relationship, what had you realize that needed to be prioritized? So it's almost like what happened? What happened, Connie?
Oh, I'm gonna just say it like it is. I'm open book.
I know you are.
Okay. Well, Jena, what happened was my life was a mess. My relationship was a steaming hot mess.
Yeah.
So we went from, my husband Andy and I, we went from being so connected, so loving, so engaged, to a place where we were really like roommates. We were very disconnected. In fact, I remember one day sitting on the couch, and we were watching TV, because Jena, that was all we were doing at that point in our relationship. Read between the lines. The lines are accurate. And I picked up the remote and I paused the show, and I'll never forget, I looked over at my husband Andy, and I said something to him that just shook both of us to the core, really. And what I said was, "Is this all there is?" And I'll never forget the look in his eyes, Jena. He had this hurt and confusion, and are we going towards divorce fear look in his eyes. And I'm grateful for that moment, because in that moment I realized, and in fact we both realized, that something needed to change, that we needed to, yes, we had a business message to get out into the world, but we needed to do it in a way that we wouldn't lose each other. We wouldn't lose our family along the way. And honestly, it scares me to death to think that I could have lost what matters most. But I'm so grateful for the principles that have allowed me to build trust in my partner, which is awesome. Now I can honestly say our relationship is better than the day we got married. He hands down is my hero, and it's incredible. And and now I see how that relationship, when that relationship is in place and connected, and there's trust there, that also massively impacts influence. It impacted my ability to write my book and to share my podcast and to work with influencers in the way that I do. That makes sense, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I thank you for sharing that. I figured you had a story.
Always.
Always, because it comes from an honest place. It comes from, I believe we land, it's almost like we're given those moments of contrast called this isn't working, so that we can either turn it around or create it differently, so that then we can tell everyone else, like, this is how it's done, or this is an opportunity for you as well. And so I think when we live in the contrast, then that's where we have the opportunity to serve other people. And so speaking of a lot of contrast, I would say this year has been a big one, right? We're in the middle of a pretty big contrasting year of things we probably don't want, things that are challenging. Everything's flipped on its head, as far as how things are done, or, like we said, we're just talking about vacation, and I was sitting there, I'm like, well, how is it to vacation right now? Because it's totally, the world's different. And so how have you navigated, just to kind of see where you are right now, and how this year has changed or added to the FIRE priorities? How are you navigating the change that's occurred this year, especially?
Oh my goodness. Well, when you're talking about that, yeah, so much has changed. And before we hopped on this conversation, I said, well, when I was getting on the plane to go to Mexico not long ago, I guess a week ago,
right.
I literally was flying into a hurricane. And so, I understand. And what's amazing is I think about our entrepreneurial journey, and there were several times on the plane with my husband, Andy, where we'd look over at each other and we'd say, this is about right, isn't it? Yep, this is about right. Yep. and sometimes it can feel like that. It can feel like we are flying into a hurricane. That's what it can feel like.
Yes.
And so it's been an interesting journey, because I there's been points in the beginning of all of what's happened in the world where I was just launching certain things.
Right.
So for example, when all of this happened with COVID-19, I launched my book in February, Valentine's Day of this year. It feels like it's been 2 years, but it's just this year. And so grateful I hit #1 international bestseller. And then after that, of course, I was launching a new program. Well, in the midst of COVID, that program, although I knew we'd been doing it for a decade, I knew it supported people, it wasn't the right time. And what's been amazing to me is, after talking to several entrepreneurs, what started to happen is these influencers, coaches, and authors started approaching me and said, Connie, it's so noisy in the space right now, in the online space. Like, how do I get my message out? I had interviewed them, I had supported them in different ways, and they started reaching out to me and saying, can you help me tell my story? Can you help me launch a product or a service and do this way? And honestly, Jena, I was kind of taken back. I was thinking, but in my mind, I was thinking, well, yeah, I want to help you, but I had this other program I was going to launch.
Over
like
here.
This is the plan. Are you guys not seeing? You didn't get the memo about the plan? Like, what's going on here? But they were, after they kept, enough of them reached out to me, I started to see that there was a different need that was emerging. And before COVID, I don't think it existed, but after COVID, there was a need for people to develop trust faster, because what started to happen, and this was happening in my own business as well. And before, you talked about, like, when we go through our own stuff and we think, oh my gosh, like, this is needed. This is exactly what started to happen, is I began to see that it was harder to build trust in the online space, because there was so much, the brick and mortars were coming online. the amount of coaching and people getting online with coaching was coming online. People's skepticism was going up. In fact, some of the research shows that like 70 to 80% of people ignore sponsored ads. Like it's just,
wow.
This is the world that we're living in today. And so anyways, so when my friends started approaching me, these influencers, authors, coaches, speakers started saying, Connie, I want you to help me tell my story. I started to see that there was a need for building trust faster so that people could trust and see through all the other noise that was going on in this space. And honestly, for me, that was a leap of faith because it was new. It wasn't the plan. And so I that's how some of the ways that I've been dealing with what's been happening in the world today.
You know, and I think that's so important for people to hear because, you know, I talk a lot about ego and egoic tricks, right? Ego tricks. And one of them is requirement. And that requirement trick is when our egos have it all planned out and it has the need for control and certainty and like, this is how it's going to be. And I have to have it this way. And or like you said, this was the plan. Didn't you get the memo? You know, and our egos are like, it immediately gets attached to the plan or to the way it, you know, it's like, well, this is where I'm going. I can't change course right now, you know, and it doesn't want to. Our egos want to stay on course because it knows more. It feels more educated. But the truth is where our education really lies and where our trust lies is in the opposite of the ego, and that's the essence of us and right, the higher self of us. And when you started hearing a new voice, you know, your friends and influencers coming to you for something else. I believe like that's when God speaks through us at times. You know, it's like the message is coming to you. You know, you may not know which way it's coming to you, but it's there and it's in the space and it's like not to be ignored. And I think that's when the brave really kicks in, is when we are willing to let go of our plan and create something new that seems to be needed and to kind of answer that calling. And I know that I've been on the roller coaster this year completely, and everything's like up and down. And even right now, I'm in a pause around a plan. So I had something planned, and I paused it because I'm like, I'm not feeling I feel more resistance than flow, right? And I don't believe it's dead in the water. I think it's just a now thing. I think it's just a timing thing. And I'm really, it's scary. Like, I feel like I've made commitments, or, you know, I've said I'm going to do this. And I mean, I feel very, my ego anyway, likes to, you know, when I declare something, I like to get it done. You know, I like to keep my word and all of that. However, it's almost like, what if the word is supposed to be something else right now? And I think that's one of the bravest things we can do, is to continue to follow that voice. And even when it doesn't make sense, even when it doesn't feel trusting, right, is to actually trust it anyway. So I really appreciate you sharing that, because I feel like a lot of people are feeling really uncertain and kind of off center because they have to keep doing things that are not what they had planned. And yet it's the most divine thing we can do. And so even in this moment, you've given me permission even more, right? I keep giving myself permission to be where I am about my pause. And it's like, it's just where it is right now. And so I love that. I love this conversation about trust and your fire priorities. I think that's a great way for people to connect to the process. And I want to just dive into a little bit more, because I know one of the biggest things we're all going through in some level is fear, right? Fear of the unknown, fear of, you know, what, you know, it's like the plan's not working, you know, so that brings on more fear. What is your approach to fear, and how do you face it head on?
Oh, so, and by the way, thank you so much for sharing what you've shared. I think we can all relate to that, those pause moments, and how much courage it takes in those moments to move forward and to have that and to face that fear. So brilliant. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I think in fear, there's a couple things that go on for me. And I know in the questionnaire you'd asked me about how do I face fear? And of course, my first thing I do, honestly, I pray, I ask for help. I can use all the help I can get. Like, I am so aware that I can't do this alone. And I think the other thing to be aware of, and by the way, I didn't always pray. I didn't always have that connection with the divine. And I feel like I need to say that sometimes because, you know, that really I've spent most of my life not having that connection. So if you're listening today and you're feeling like, well, Connie, what if I don't know how to pray, or if I don't know who to pray to, or how all that works? You're good. You're all good. And just know that's a relationship with the divine in whatever way fits for you, that you can build that relationship. But I promise you, as you do, you will get that connection.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So Jena, one of the things that I do when I face that edge of the fear is I understand that there is an edge. Now, in my book, Women with Fire, I go into this in a lot of detail about what happens at the edge of our comfort zones, because I believe that's exactly when we're facing fear, that's what's happening. We're bumping up the edge of our comfort zone. And I think that two things happen. We have these two different parts of ourselves. One part is that part that's like, no, just back away from the edge. Like, just sit. There's a couch of comfort. Just relax on the couch of comfort, right? And it'll be totally good. And maybe there'll be a margarita there. You don't know. You don't know. It'll just be super chill. Like, just, it's all good. We'll put on some Netflix. It'll be totally fine. And so we've got that place of just step back from the edge. It'll be more comfortable if we do.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I love a good smoothie, and I also love good Netflix.
I love
like,
binging.
don't get me wrong. But when we're stepping up into the edge, what's happening is there's two parts of ourselves, right? That's part that's saying, just stay comfortable. I want to keep you safe. And then there's a part of ourselves that's like, no, you're bigger than that. There's more for you to do. There's something great for you to do. And it really is like we're stepping off the edge. There's, you know, I live in an area of the country that's close to the Grand Canyon. And I remember one day stepping up to the edge of the Grand Canyon and looking over the edge and feeling all those butterflies and fears come up. You know, you're on the edge. But that's what happens when we face the comfort zone. We step up to that edge and we feel like, but we're going to fall. But we're going to fall. But what happens is divine intervention happens. Yeah. And as we get that inspiration, like you talked about, you just know that feeling of flow. You know that feeling of, I'm going in the right direction. What's really happening there is a stepping stone's appearing. Yeah. And when we take a step towards that stepping stone, it's almost like there's a big, huge cloud and we can't see it. And we step out and we're closing our eyes like, please let there be a stepping stone. Please let there be a stepping stone. And we take a step and we're like, oh, that's a relief. I did not fall to my demise. Yes. High five, universe.
Yes.
And that's what happens. The trick in this entire thing is that we don't have the privilege of seeing the entire stepping stone staircase. Yeah. We just have a sense and feel the next step. But as we take it, we get closer and closer and closer to our divine potential.
I love it. That's like, as soon as you said it, I was like Indiana Jones.
Totally. Yeah.
I'm like, that is the best analogy for trust and for following the intuition. I have a hashtag called gut and faith, right? Yeah. Gut and faith. And it's you know, it's like listening to the gut, that intuition, that instinct, that trust, that knowing, and following it with faith. And that is the stones falling, you know, in front of us. And I think the trick is to outsmart our egoic self that's trying to protect us and put us back on the couch and just numb out, avoid, run away, procrastinate. Let's not do that. Why do I need to put myself in danger? Why do I need to, you know, put my foot over the edge? And yet there is ground there, and it's the best kind of ground, right? It's the best kind of stepping stone, because it is the support that you're looking for, but it requires the most immense amount of brave that anyone can, you know, bring to the table. So. I don't know, this year's already flown by. What's the most recent moment where you've had to trust the stone in front of you? Do you remember?
Yeah, absolutely. So the most recent stone I needed to trust in front of me was, we're standing at the airport. We're trying to get back on our plane flying to the US. We're in Mexico. But because we're here in the US with a visa allowing us to be here, and because of COVID, there's an issue with our visa. Now it's been resolved, and everyone, you know, in the paperwork knows it's being resolved, but the people at the airport are not trusting that, and they're not allowing us to get on the plane, despite calls to our lawyers, despite showing documents, despite everything. They're literally saying, you cannot get on the plane to go back to your children. And I remember standing there at the desk with these employees in front of me thinking, what are we going to do? And I know we've been talking about those stepping stones as they appear. And I just remember having the distinct feeling like, do not leave the desk. Don't leave the desk. And despite, you know, they just wanted to kind of get us out of the way, just go sit down and we'll figure it out. But I knew that if we, out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
And so I stood there, and we had all the information, we had all the documentation, we had all the information from our lawyer, we were prepared. And I just stood there and let them know that we would be happy to move once it's resolved. And I think that sometimes in those moments of stepping into the fear, stepping into the unknown,
yes,
it does take that mix of preparation and kind of that willingness to withstand the storm. Yeah. Because in our own minds and the circumstances of life, there is the storm, whether it's people saying you can't do that business, or people saying, you know, you'll never make it, or in our own minds, we think that. And I think that they're
self-doubt.
Yeah, that's self-doubt, totally. And it just takes a willingness to have that preparation as much as possible, and then stand in the storm and just take the next step anyways.
Wow. Okay. So obviously you made it home.
Made it home. I made it home.
Like, how did it resolve? So standing at the desk was the shift.
It was the certainty in what I knew. You know, I knew we had everything in order. I knew that we had the paperwork, we had the lawyer stuff, and just being unwilling to back down, being unwilling to move. We would not stay out of people's minds. And I think right now, in what's happening in the world today too, there's some you know, maybe you're not standing at the airport thinking, will they let me leave Mexico? Like, maybe that's not your challenge right now. But yes, they did let us get on the plane, and it was resolved and all worked out perfectly. But the principle is the same. If you're standing in a place of you don't feel enough, or people are coming against you, or you feel like you don't know how it's all going to work out, doing everything that you can to prepare as best as possible, and then standing in the storm and being willing to imagine the best case scenario, imagining it all work out, and yes, being willing to seek the divine and asking for help. All of those things allow the divine to prepare another stepping stone so we can move forward.
Love it. You know, it's funny. I call it the bounce back factor, you know, the ability to, you know, in a split seconds or minutes, you know, to be able to filter all the things, you know, away from the ego, back to the higher self, knowing to ask for help, you know, divinely, and you know, kind of staying in the storm. Like I said earlier, it takes practice, right? And I know that, you know, it's recognizing which voice are you listening to, the one that says stay at the desk, or the one that's getting angry and frustrated, and, you know, it's like yes, throwing in the towel and everything. And inside of that, I've recognized two preparations. Like, I love that you brought that up. One being knowledge preparation. It's kind of like you had all your ducks in the row. You had the paperwork, you had all that, you know, prepared, and you did your homework around that, it sounds like. And then there's emotional preparation, which I don't think we get a lot of practice in, or a lot of teaching in, per se. It's like, that's not the thing that we get the lessons on. And emotional preparation is knowing how to stand in the storm and stay connected to jumping off the ledge moment, and not preparing from a place of armor, right? Like, how do I, you know, fight and protect? And because I think that's what's happening in the world right now with all the divisiveness. It's like, that's not emotional preparation. that's, that's the opposite of, like that's the exercise of, listening to your egoic self instead of finding your higher self. And I think that's what you did beautifully, is you had the knowledge preparation, but more importantly, you've done the work on yourself over how many years, to be emotionally prepared, for the storms, for the moments that don't make sense, the moments that, that you can't see the next stone in place, but you got to trust that it's there, and create in the moment that you're on the plane. I love it. I love it.
It's so true, Jena. Oh my gosh. You know what's so funny? I love that you point that out. There's actually moments, because I could feel myself. Obviously,
Yeah, we're fighting it.
I'm fighting for my babies. I'm like, I need to be home with my babies that do not get in the way of mama bear and babies.
Right.
And so there's that part that wanted to go towards contention and anger, and pulling back and finding my center. And it's amazing that you talk about that, because I remember after things happened, I looked over at my husband and I said, man, am I ever grateful for my mentors, because I have mentors, Dame Doria Cordova, Dame Maria Simone, Dame Marsha Martin, that have guided me. And in those moments of where the storm was just blowing, in those moments, I went to their advice. In fact, there's one particular point where I remember standing there in the line and saying over and over and over something that Maria Simone had said to me, which is, I've got this, I've got this, I've got this, over and over for 30 seconds, claiming what I wanted. I'm going to get on that plane. I claim getting on that plane. I claim getting on that plane.
Yep.
And then it's working for 30 seconds. And I replayed that over and over and over in my mind to get back to the center.
I love it. I love it. And that is what it takes. It sounds simple, yet it's like in the moment, it's almost forgotten, right?
Yes.
It's really, and I'm not perfect at it. There are absolutely moments I don't go there. I go the wrong way, but that's the practice. If we don't have these moments in front of us, we don't have the chance to go through the exercise of that. And then it works. And then we prove it to ourselves, and we create more evidence for ourselves that, getting back to center is actually where our power lives. So Connie, thank you so much for being an illustration of all this, and being so committed to helping, especially women, live in their fire priorities, and practice what they need to get their stories out and trust themselves. Like, that's just awesome. I'm so glad to know you, and to be on that journey with you. And so how can other people connect with you? What's the best way?
Oh my goodness. First of all, thank you so much. This has been so fun. So you can connect with me over email is the best way, Connie@myfirewithin.com. I am all over social media, but I love getting an email. Tell me about your storms. Tell me about the moments when you faced your fear. That would be awesome.
Amazing.
And I would love to share my free book as well. I do have a free book for all of your listeners. You can check that out and grab your free copy, your e-copy, at myfirewithin.com/free book. Again, that's myfirewithin.com/free book.
Perfect. That's amazing. Thank you for the gift. I always appreciate my guests when they're so generous, and of course you are. And we'll put that in the notes so they have it. And one final question to close the show is, if this was your last interview, if this was the last stage, the last chance to share a message to the world, what would that message be?
You have something great to do in this life. You have something that's inspired, that you have a divine purpose that's bigger than you can possibly imagine. And as you take steps towards that, towards being who you're meant to be within your family relationships, and within your business, promise you'll have a bigger impact than you can possibly imagine, because someone is waiting for your message.
Amazing. See, you never have to speak again. I'm just kidding. I encourage you to, please. Need more of you. But beautifully said, and so perfect for right now. So thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And everyone, thank you for listening. If this made an impact on you, please share with us your thoughts. Email Connie, email me, put a review on iTunes, whatever makes sense for you. And until next time, let's go get our brave on.